privilege of asking the first question. And I kind of hinted during my remarks, Bob, about your dealings with North Korea and Iraq. And there's been a lot of talk in the press about who's rational and who's irrational. Ahmadinejad, Khomeini, the former head of Israeli Mossad, saying they're rational. But you've dealt with regimes that had that label many times and had results. So what's your opinion about dealing with Iran and their label of being either rational or irrational?
There's a pretty good exchange between Kenneth Waltz, some of you know, a political scientist, and Scott Sagan. Waltz, the international theorist, and Sagan, really a smart guy out at Stanford, about whether these nuclear weapons are sort of sanity-making. In other words, countries that behave really, really poorly internally, and even rather aggressively externally. When nuclear weapons are on the table, they become more conservative, more sane, adopt attitudes that are more consistent with what we'd expect about a country worried about deterrence, etc. I would love to be able to bring enormous intelligence to that debate based upon discussions I've had at length with Iraqis right after the first Gulf War and then negotiations with the North Koreans. But in both cases, those were structured for us to have a rational discussion. In other words, the Iraqis were very interested in managing the inspection regime that I was one of the leaders of the UN Special Commission. And I believe they behaved very rationally, which was to say they pushed right up to the limits. They held us in a parking lot for however long they wanted to, until they thought there might be some really bad consequences, and then we got out. You can say that was pretty rational. With the North Koreans, that if you look at the agreed framework 150 years ago, in 1994, you'll see a very complex document. I mean, it is really complicated. So this was not, it looks like only people who went to Kennedy School wrote it, but the other guys were part of this deal. So they're quite capable, it seems to me, and I don't think any of the less of those in Tehran. It is sometimes, as you will have noted, difficult to know exactly who's calling the shots. Although I think we know most of the time in Tehran, it gets a little complicated. But I think that the level at which you're raising this question, and you can tell also by the answers I gave, I think these are deterrable people, generally speaking, but their risk propensities are also different than our own.
Boy, you're confirming my suspicions more or less. I've got to ask one more before I turn it over to the audience. We're in the heat of a political season. This has been a hot topic on the campaign trail. Most of the candidates have stood up and proffered some kind of fairly strong position on how they feel about Iran and nuclear weapons, and so has the administration. So how much do you feel that being in a campaign season, this has to bear on the administration's position in terms of Iran possessing nuclear weapons?
I mean, the campaign can't help. I mean, it just can't. It doesn't inject an extra level of sanity into anybody's thinking. I do not put it beyond any candidate's capacities to make decisions about what they're going to say about this issue and being driven, or at least guided, at least in part, by its political impact. That said, having been in an administration at times at the time of election and negotiating in the summer before congressional elections, I think the administration, who has the responsibility for this, I expect that they would not be making, I mean, they may regret some things that will happen, but I think they'll be driven by the national security. I mean, one of the funnier moments was when, in the negotiations with the North Koreans, when my negotiating partner, Kang Sang-Chu, said to me in September, which was a month before we actually had the deal, and 2 months before the congressional elections, he said, "I know you need a deal for the congressional elections." I said, a number of things strike me odd about that. One, that you knew we had congressional elections. I think that's extraordinary. Second, that you would think congressional elections turn on any foreign policy issue, much less this one, is absolutely bizarre. And since I've never heard anyone mention anything about the elections to me, and I'm the negotiator, I'm pretty sure I'm under no pressure. But there's this kind of expectation that it's there. And I hope that people aren't counting on that one way or the other.
Yeah, I hope not. Okay, I can open up to questions. Yes, sir, I've got a mic right here.
No, it's not for that. It's for camera.
Does that go on? Oh, on camera. I'm sorry, I guess we don't have a mic, so if you go ahead and stand up and just state your name and affiliation and your question.
Dave Eisenberg, Huffington Post. Sir, appreciate your remarks, especially the clarification about not using military strikes. Totally agree with. My question is this. If in the worst case everything falls apart in Israel or the United States goes together, go to war, which is what we're talking about, against Iran, and they do destroy nuclear facilities, at least ones that are known, what happens 5 to 10 years down the road? Because the way I see it, knowledge is fundamental. Nobody's accusing the Iranians of being a scientific or technologically illiterate society, but still has the same nuclear potential, not the same level of base currently in place to forge ahead fully with the nuclear weapons program. It will obviously have dropped out of the NPT. There will be no IAEA constraints. So how would any military action or campaign solve the basic problem, which is to prevent them from having nuclear weapons?
All right, so the shorthand of that question is, the shorthand statement of that question is, since there's been a lot said about the unlikelihood or even impossibility through the use of military force that does not involve regime change, but rather is targeted on the nuclear facilities, stopping the program permanently with a strike or series of strikes. How could we propose to do this and just confront an angry, more coherent, non-NPT party now bent on nuclear weapons and perhaps getting some sympathy for it? I think the argument for the strike, in light of the part of the argument that this would be addressed here, would be to say that and don't distinguish here, please, or ask me to distinguish between an Israeli strike and an American strike, but a strike would degrade the program for something from months to years. More precise than that, I certainly can't be. I imagine the people who target, and there are people who get paid to do this in your government here, would probably give an estimate of what a campaign could produce in terms of degrading that program in terms of numbers of years. And one way of answering you is to say, and the plan would be, if, ceteris paribus, nothing changes, restrike. But the message to the Iranians is, this will not stand, kind of. That we would have to be in a position of saying that we won't tolerate, under current circumstances, an Iranian nuclear weapons program. One that was developed outside of IAEA safeguards, one that was pursued for the development of a nuclear weapon inconsistent with your NPT treaty obligations, and given the circumstances in the region, responsible states have had to act. Right? So and we would act again if nothing changes. That I think would be the simple answer. Slightly longer answer would be that there's a joke, which I will not tell, whose punchline is, or maybe the horse will talk. And if you back that up, I promise I'm not telling this joke, if you can delay a nuclear weapons program, sometimes there are internal changes. There was a nuclear weapons program at one time in Argentina. There was one in Brazil. There was one in South Korea. There was one on Taiwan. There are a lot of nuclear weapons programs around the world which didn't turn into nuclear weapons. The one in South Africa did actually produce nuclear weapons, but with the passage of time, they were given up. So one can hope for political change. One can work for political change, and I don't mean regime change here. There are other things one can do. So it does not strike me as crazy to strike, even if one has a, let's say, realistic view of the limits of the impact of a strike.
Yes, sir.
Jeremy had one of the things I've heard from analysts and watchers and threaders is the possibility of Iran not then using a weapon, but using a weapon shooting. A lot of other approaches. Can you assess that claim or that possibility?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to speak to when I said the thing I was worried about most was transfer. And in my mind, the transfer of a nuclear weapon is less likely than the transfer of highly enriched uranium. And that's because with a nuclear weapon, the fingerprints are going to be harder to remove. In other words, the analysis, the effort, which sometimes is called attribution, either pre-detonation or post-detonation. If it's a whole nuclear weapon that's transferred, for a variety of reasons, we'd have a much better chance of tracing it back to Iran. We should be making it clear to countries that we think have either fissile material that might transfer more weapons, that if that should happen, we would treat them as an attacker and hope to gain deterrence against the transfer. The scenario that I'm talking about is a variation on what you said, which is a transfer of just the material. Not that I would say it's impossible for us to, as a result of forensics work, the isotopics or other means to attribute the material to Iran as the source, but it would be harder than with a weapon. They would have a greater chance, if that's what they wish to do, of not being found out if they transfer to highly enriched uranium. So that is, in fact, a concern. I wasn't picking groups here, and I know a lot of people ask, well, why would they do that? If they wish to do harm and have suspicion that they did it, but without enough confidence so that retaliation would be justified politically, morally, ethically, then maybe that's why they would. In any case, I do worry about that. In fact, I put that as my number one worry, a combination of probability that isn't very high, but consequences